interface on the screen that either has 3 little dots. If you move your mouse over it, you will see where the chat room is listed up at the top. For some of you, your screens might show a little cartoon bubble that you would see like in a cartoon in a newspaper. And either one of those, if you click there, you'll find the chat room. I'm going to ask if you would please type in, let us know your name and the county that you're with, that you're representing this evening, and that will help to get our conversation started. The screen that you're looking for is going to look like this. So it says Zoom group chat, and when you type into the red square box at the bottom and hit enter, it's your opportunity to put in your comment or your question, and that will be viewable and accessible to everyone who is joining us here this evening. And then it gives everyone an opportunity to see what the answer is coming in as well. A little note about questions. We may not be able to answer the questions immediately as they arise, but we will stop and pause if there's something that's particularly relevant to a screen that you're looking at, and we will certainly have an opportunity at the end. I expect that this will be an area of high interest for a lot of folks, and you're going to want to have an opportunity to talk about some of your personal experiences, what's worked for you, maybe what hasn't worked for you, but you know that there's a way to be able to do something, and so here's an opportunity to really talk with the experts. So we will be monitoring your questions and take an opportunity to answer them as soon as we can or at the very end. All right, now I'm going to hand over the microphone to Ashley and let her take it away. Thanks.
Okay, hi all. My name is Ashley Tyndall. I'll give you a little intro to me, and then I'll turn it over to Greg so he can greet you all. I am a documentary filmmaker based in Chapel Hill, and before moving to Chapel Hill, I worked for National Geographic and HBO, so I've been doing that for about 15, 20 years. Long time. I also have a master's in communications and documentary film and also master's in public policy. So I've been thinking a lot about how media, and now today in this world, absolutely social media can really shape how, audiences, the news that people get, and also motivating people to action. So those are the things that I really love about social media. There are things I absolutely hate about social media, which I'm sure many of you probably share a lot of that same feeling. So tonight I hope to just give you an overview and some of the tips that I've got, and hopefully Greg will too, to make this a little bit easier. Some of you might be masters at social media. I'm not sure what everybody's doing in their different counties. Other people might just want to get started. And of course, I want to encourage you to get started because obviously this is incredibly, these tools are very, very powerful. And we want to get you feeling really comfortable and know some good ways to use them. So that is me. Greg, would you like to jump in and introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. This is Greg Meyer. I'm state representative from Orange County. I'm in my 3rd term in the legislature. I have used social media to advertise my campaign, to build a statewide network of people who are trying to support Democratic candidates this year, and to try and help promote other people. Like our candidates have been doing a lot of work recently on promoting candidates from around the state, so that they can get outside of their district to be able to find followers and supporters all over, particularly for candidates who don't live in a resource-rich area like Orange County, where it might help them to have a little bit of profile in areas like ours, where we have some Democrats who will be good and donate to people in other parts of the state. So that's how I've been using social recently.
Cool. So tonight we are going to cover a brief intro to the different, the major social media platforms currently in use. So primarily Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and I'll give a little nod to YouTube. Obviously, the social media landscape changes all the time, but I think for our purposes this year and going into this election, these are the ones that are going to be most important to use, obviously. And then we'll touch upon, the sort of the team that you might want to build, things you want to think about with people as your resources, and then also just a little bit of a kind of a checklist to sort of get you started on these different platforms. We'll give you some tips on content, tips for each major platform, and a few things to avoid from our experience. And then we'll do a bit more of a Q&A at the end. So let's jump forward. So as Greg has already mentioned, social media is extremely useful for building community. This is a way for you all to connect easily with your reliable voters. So people that you reach out to, you want to make sure that they already are in communication with you, and that will also help you attract new voters because it is all networking, obviously. This also will help you establish your image in the community, or if you have a really well-established image, it might help improve your reputation. So it's a very useful tool just to make sure that your presence is noted. And for many of the small parties, or let's say the counties with fewer resources, where maybe the party hasn't been so upfront or noticeable in the community in recent years, this is a great way to just let people know you exist and that you're active in the community. It's also a great way to do public education, so getting statements out, making sure you're communicating about whatever is topical, things going on in your community, maybe even national politics, and also to alert your community to what they can do to actually act. And then it also helps you develop the network. So you want to think about your party or your candidate existing in a constellation of people that are like-minded, that want to see the same kind of action. And so using social media, you can actually reach out to these people. You can connect yourself in this network. And then you can work together. And part of that is amplifying the message of your community organizations, your candidates, obviously, but also the national and state parties. And so social media is a way of, letting the message carom around the room a bit and getting it out to your community. Greg, do you have anything else you'd add on social media? Why use it?
I mean, that's a great list. I think the other thing, maybe here's what I would add is social media works best when you also use it as a form for listening and being interactive with people. And so there are times where I'm trying to get a message out, but there are other times where what I'm really looking for is interaction and the chance to hear what people are thinking, sometimes to influence my opinion or how my perspective or what choices I have to make on what I'm going to do. And other times just to be able to help give me a more informed perspective. So for instance, on Labor Day, I posted a post about my first job and asked for other people to post about their first jobs with a little bit of detail about how much they made and what it was and things, in part because I was looking for stories around work that I could use out on the campaign trail about work and wages, basically, and how much people get paid for things.
Yeah, that's a great point. And certainly with social media, you not only, if you're asking for stories, people will contact you, and you want to make sure that they know you're listening as well. So, getting back to them, I mean, Greg, you're amazing at that, just making sure people know that you've actually read what they've written and you respond to it. You or maybe someone on your team, I don't know. But you seem like you're doing it well.
Yeah, it's me. That's me.
Okay. Okay, so let's move on. All right, so here are our social media platforms. The big ones: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and then of course YouTube. So as many of you have probably figured out by now, Facebook tends to be people over 30, a lot of relatives. Many years ago, my nieces figured out that my parents were on Facebook, and my nieces promptly departed Facebook. So you probably have already experienced this, but it does not mean that it's not incredibly useful. Obviously, tons of events go out across Facebook. Lots of people organize their calendars with these public events. It's a great way to organize your subgroups. So for instance, I'm a part of the Colonial Heights precinct, and so we have our own subgroup on the Orange County Democratic Party Facebook page. And so that's a great way for us to chat with each other about canvassing. We're going to canvass this Saturday, so we can talk about meeting up, bringing snacks, water. So it is a very nice way because it actually helps us build like a community within a community. So Facebook is still extremely valuable for that. It's also a great way to get out articles and press releases. Greg, I know that you post press releases there, statements on things that have happened. And so if you do post things to like articles or press releases on Facebook, it's really good to comment on them. So for instance, if your county party wants to say something about an article that's in the NNO or the Greensboro Record, you just want to say what it is you want people to take away from this article. And that actually gets more people to share it. It's also a great way to respond to questions. So I know the Orange County Democratic Party, we always get people messaging us on Facebook asking very specific things like timing for, early voting, how they can find out about their precinct, whether or not they're even registered. And so it's really important to respond to questions on Facebook so that people know that they can get a hold of you. You are a person and you are there to respond to them. It's also a great way to showcase community. So Facebook, once your photos go up there, they're pretty much always up there unless you specifically delete them. So it's a good way for people to just go directly to your events page or to your photos page, and they can really see how active you are visually instantaneously. So it's a good way to use Facebook for that. Twitter, of course, is more about responding, to current news. There's lots of, you can respond to people in a thread. So it's a way to start conversations. It's a way to be involved in conversations. It's a much more immediate thing. And for any of you who've ever scrolled through Twitter, you know that you spend very little time on each Twitter post. You're pretty much scrolling through very, very quickly. So it's a lot harder to get people to stay on any particular tweet. So it's really, brevity is your friend. Visual shares are your friend. People love watching little videos, having a photo. So if you are doing something like, let's say, canvassing, having a photo of all your volunteers out canvassing is going to be extremely valuable on Twitter. It just shows that you're out there and doing things. And so that's obviously a good place to announce events as well. But you don't want to really use it as a place to do deep policy thinking or posting really involved things. We can get to that more later, but Twitter is going to be a much more instantaneous thing. So don't get too caught up about getting a lot of depth there. Instagram. So this is something that is really for, let's say, teens to people maybe in their 40s. So a lot more youth are going to be on Instagram. And we'll get more detailed on Instagram a little bit later, but this is another place to showcase your community activity and events. It's obviously a visual platform, so photos, videos, inspirational messages, that sort of thing. If you are not so familiar with Instagram, I would just encourage you to look at our feed for the Orange County Democratic Party. We're at Orange Dems, and you can also look at Greg's feed at Greg Meyer. He posts a lot. Just get familiar with what other people are posting, and you can see what people like and what people share, and that will help inform what might work best for you. Very good for candidates messaging also. YouTube is really, unless you somehow have a star within your party or you are a candidate and you want to make a lot of videos featuring this person, I would really just encourage you to think about using YouTube as just a way to store your videos and creating a library. So a lot of people are just going to search, let's say, for Lee County Dems. And if you have a YouTube channel that pops up and you have that's just where you stashed your videos, then people can look at all the videos you've created. I wouldn't necessarily encourage you to use it too much more unless you want to make sure that people, like for us with the webinars, it's a great place for us to stash all of our webinars so that any of you can go and look at all the webinars on your own time. So you could do that for candidate commentary, announcements, meetings, that kind of thing. But I'm not going to get too much more into YouTube tonight because I think we really should concentrate on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I'm going to move on, and maybe Greg can jump in on this one.
Can I just say one quick thing about the last slide?
Yep.
You did a great job, Ashley, of talking through what the audiences are and the ways to use them. I think about the social media platforms in specific ways of what I'm trying to create. I use Facebook to create community. I use Twitter to create influence because of who the audience is, because it's newsmakers and other politicians, as well as kind of people who are, just political followers. But Twitter has the specific audience of people in the news and people in politics. So it's more about influence for me. And then Instagram is more about image, partially because it's a visual form. And so I tried, sometimes there are things that I do that go across all three of them, but sometimes there are things that I only post on one or the other because of what I'm trying to do with that post.
Great. Well, that's a perfect segue into our next slide, which is about audiences. So one thing that you have to think about when you decide what you're going to do with social media is who do you want to talk to? So just like Greg mentioned, are you thinking about, let's say you're a candidate, your image, you want to make sure that you're inspiring a younger audience? Is it that you want to be involved in influencing policy? So you want to make sure that your op-ed gets out to people, it gets into the right hands. So you really want to think through who is your target audience and why you want to use social media. And that way you can, just as Greg said, you can figure out which platform they're on. You want to meet them where they're at. So if you're thinking about a younger population, if you're thinking about get out the vote in your county, you might want to say, okay, well, if these, let's say they're students, maybe there's a college in your community, they're probably going to be on Instagram. And so you really want to target your material for the Instagram platform. Same thing with, let's say, Facebook with community. If you're really trying to get a lot of volunteers in the door, then you want to make sure that you're, for instance, creating subgroups for your precincts, or you're creating a young Democrat subgroup for your county. Greg, is there anything else you want to say about meeting audience where they're at?
In some ways, this is the trickiest part of social media, is that it allows you to really get to very specific audiences if you know how to do it right. And this is, I think I probably spend more time thinking about who is the audience and how to get to that audience, whether that's through the message or through paying for targeting to an audience. I mean, this is the biggest crux of social media, and we probably can come back to this in more depth and if people have questions about it.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Okay, so let's move on then. So who or whom do you need? So with the Orange County Democratic Party last year, we met and we discussed about what social media should look like, or our social media presence. And we already had a Facebook page. Someone was occasionally using Twitter. We had no Instagram page. And we figured out, all right, we live in a place where we want a lot of millennials to turn out and vote next time. We really failed on that last time. So how are we going to do that? And of course, my first thing was like, well, we need an Instagram account. We need to talk about it. But not only that, we needed to actually have younger people involved with the party to be doing the posting. And so we now have done that. So when I was writing this slide, I was thinking about, you don't just need a team, you need an appropriate team. You want to make sure you've got someone on your team who can talk to these different audiences. And it doesn't necessarily mean that only millennials can talk to millennials or only over 65s can talk to 65s. You just want to make sure that you've got people who understand the platform a bit, they understand the messaging a bit, and that they're willing to take some chances, and also be reliable, which is always nice, since we are all volunteer here. So I would recommend that you have a team. It can be one person. If you're a really small county, if you're just starting out, that's fine. One person. You can't do everything, so just limit what you're doing, and try to keep it under control for your own sanity. But if you can get 5 volunteers, that would be amazing. I don't think you need a whole lot more than that. And one of the reasons I say that is because you want to make sure that with your platforms, you still sound like you're speaking with a single voice. And so if you have too many people, it gets too disparate, and you don't want people just posting willy-nilly, which is a technical term, willy-nilly. So I would highly recommend that if you've got a number of volunteers, that's awesome. Try having either a single coordinator or do something which is basically a messaging protocol. And don't get freaked out by me using a protocol term. I just mean, like, if it's a one sheet that just keeps everybody on the same page, literally. So no profanity. Don't get involved in trolling. Stick to the language that you've agreed on. So you just want to come up with whatever is the appropriate messaging protocol for whatever you're trying to do. And so if you can't have a single coordinator running all of your volunteers, or if it's just one person, the messaging protocol just helps take the guesswork out of it when it comes to posting, because obviously with social media, sometimes you're posting on the fly, you're posting from an event. And so if everybody kind of has the idea of the protocol in their head, then you probably won't ever have to retract or delete anything. So you just want to keep it simple. That being said, for each platform, like I said, it's obviously great to have somebody who's familiar with that platform posting to that platform. Here with OCDP, we've kind of worked that out. We basically have an undergrad who's doing a lot of our Instagram posting. We have a former retired journalist who's doing a lot of our Facebook posting. And then, many of us will actually take on some of the Twitter responsibilities. And that seems to have worked out really well. We've really, really grown our social media presence over the last year, and I think it's going to have an impact. And we can obviously answer a lot more questions about what we've specifically done. Obviously, not everyone on the social media team, or if it's only one person, can be at every event. So I would just encourage you to ask someone to take responsibility at each event. Just reach out to somebody that you know is going and just say, hey, can you just take a couple of shots with some people? Just send them to me, let me know who to tag, and then you can post them. That way, you never lose the opportunity to show that you are involved in the community, you're out there. You don't have to take 100 photos. 2, even 1 will do. Just try to make sure that you have a constant flow of things going out to show that you are out there. Greg, any comments on the team that you need, the people?
No, I should be better at that. I do almost all. Thanks for the tips, Ashley.
You're welcome. All right, so moving on. So what do you need? All right, so this is sort of my ideal list. Everybody has to come up with whatever works the best for them, especially with whatever your technological prowess is. The very first thing you need to do, because you really want to put some thinking into it before you just launch out there, because obviously these are public platforms, and you want to control your messaging and you want to control your image. So the very first thing is just think about what your campaign is. So for a candidate, that's easy. For a county party, it's a little bit more difficult. It might just be, we just want to get Democrats elected, or it might be, we just want to support this particular candidate, or it might be a get out the vote campaign, or we need to reach out to rural workers. Whatever your specific campaign is and your audience is, it's really helpful just to do a one-page document that just states what your goal is, what the timeline is, what your benchmarks are, who's working on it, and then come up with a hashtag for the campaign. Like I said, this is my ideal hit list. This might not work for you, but it really helps to be focused and state all these things at the outset. And that way everybody's on the same page, whether it's one person, 2 people, 5 people, or your whole steering committee, 10 people maybe. Certainly leading up to November, we now have very specific benchmarks. So I would highly recommend that you do this, and I'm happy to answer questions about that later. A huge part of obviously defining your campaign is figuring out your target audience, and obviously different campaigns will be different target audiences. Like I said, the messaging protocol is a really great thing to have. And I want to really encourage you that this is just guidelines. It doesn't have to be super restrictive. I mean, we've certainly found that when you get a lot more voices at the table, yes, chaos can reign, but that's when you get incredibly creative, wonderful ideas, and that's really helpful on social media. So you want to make sure that everybody can say, listen, why don't we just do this on Instagram? And that's, so you don't want a messaging protocol that cuts people off. You just want to make sure that it's a reasonable thing, like such as no profanity, right? I also highly recommend, and we use this at OCDP, a social media management account. Many of you have probably tried, you know, you have a legislative breakfast, you want to post across all your platforms, and so you have to log into every account, you have to resize everything, and you have to come up with some, you know, blurb for each of your social media accounts. If you use something like Buffer or Hootsuite, they do have free programs. You can also pay a certain amount per month. There is a nonprofit rate with Buffer, which is what we use with OCDP. It's very helpful because you log into one account. All of your social media accounts are linked there. And so you can schedule photos, comments to go out, whatever you want. You can schedule it up to, I think, 10 weeks in advance. So if you know that you have an event coming up, you can schedule for a reminder to go out for that event across all of your platforms. And it does the resizing for you. And it also lets you tag appropriately for each account. So I can talk a lot more about that in detail, but I would highly, highly recommend for your own sanity that you get a Buffer or Hootsuite account, and that really helps enormously. Also, if you don't already have a Google Drive, I would also recommend that. That's just a nice way that your whole team can share docs. You can share your media. You can store your photos and videos there, create records, task lists, all that. I think Google Drive is probably the most accessible for the most people. So I would highly recommend you use that. And you also want to just keep track of all of your social media accounts and make sure that you have links to them. So if you have a party website with your county party, make sure that you have the links to all of your social media on your website so that people can find you. That is the most critical thing. You don't want it to be a mystery for people to know where you are and when you're commenting. Greg, anything else you'd like to add to this?
One thing that Buffer has that's amazing is they have one of the best social media blogs out there. And even if you just go and look at all their old blogs, they have the best tips on how to get the most out of your social media.
Awesome. I have not read that. I will have to do so. Okay, so moving on to content. Are we doing good on time? Okay, Julie gives me the thumbs up. So all social media is going to be much more powerful for you if you can think of it in a visual context rather than text. So we have definitely moved away from the world of Facebook maybe 10 years ago, where it was all just text and messaging and posting articles. You really want to have photos of people, of your events. If you're spending any time on social media, you see this often. If you want to post an inspirational quote or a question to people, you're obviously more likely to do this now against a colored background and sort of a snapshot situation. And we can talk a lot more about this. You know, hopefully you're familiar with either Photoshop or Canva, or if you use Buffer, they have a built-in tool called Pablo. There are lots and lots of ways to take your text and turn it into something that's a visual, that's, you know, that's going to be visually attractive. And it's just going to mean more shares. People are more likely to like it. They're more likely to forward it on. It's just the world we live in. Some of us who love literature and words might mourn the day that text went away, but this is the world we live in. It's visual, so get used to it. That being said, people want to see other people. So what we have definitely seen with OCDP on our social media feeds is that the more likes and more shares we get are from the photos of our actual events. So if you've got phone banking going on and you've got volunteers, even if you have an ugly office, take a great photo of those volunteers, tag them. People love that and they share that. And that shows that you're having an effect. You're getting out in the community. You're doing something. You're phone banking. You're canvassing. You're supporting a candidate. So don't be afraid. Just take quick photos. Try to do it in decent light, light from the front, not from behind. As a filmmaker, that's one of my peeves. But just get it out there so that people can see all the people that are involved, and they can see what you look like too. If you're a party chair, make sure your photo is all over your social media so that people have access to you. They know what you look like. They can associate the name with the face, and obviously tag as many people as possible. With a content management account like Buffer or Hootsuite, or even if you're using Google Drive, you can store a lot of your content. So for me, I feel like as a social media user, consumer, as well as a producer, it's better to have a constant flow rather than a deluge. So let's say you've taken 100 photos of your legislative breakfast, which I actually did last year for ours. I didn't just put them all out on one day. I spread them out over almost 2 months, including little videos I did with our chair and with our representatives. And they still have impact even a month later. So don't think that you have to just deluge people with, every event, 100 photos. No, no, no. Store the content and release it over time. And that way people feel like they're still, they're connecting with you. They're still seeing how active you are. And it also saves you because you're obviously probably not having a event every week. And like I said before, try to ask your larger team, party members, volunteers to take and share photos. So even if it's not necessarily going out through your account, if they're tagging you, they're tagging your party, they're tagging a candidate at a certain event, it all helps. So don't be afraid to ask people to share something that they've just taken, a picture of you or whatever. Okay, so I'm going to go on to talk a little bit more specifically about Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Greg, up until this point, anything else you'd like to add?
No, keep going.
Okay. All right, Facebook. So this is sort of nitty-gritty stuff. So I am sort of gearing this to a first-time user. I'm hoping a lot of you already have a Facebook page. And I do mean a page, an organization page. Do not make this your personal account. This needs to be a public organization page. And then from there, you can use your subgroups and make those private. Or they can be public, but obviously most of ours are private, such as our volunteers page. But don't make this associated with an individual's personal account. Definitely make it an organization page. And if you have questions on how to do that, definitely ask. Also, it is critical that people can find you easily. So make sure that your handle is not too confusing or too similar. So for instance, we are the Orange County Democratic Party, and there's an Orange County in Florida, in New Jersey, in California. So we did not, when we started our Facebook page, and I will punt on this was someone else, not me, we did not put NC into our description. And so we often get people who think that we're Orange County, California. So I would highly encourage you not to repeat our mistake. Make sure you have North Carolina or NC in your handle if possible. Or if you know that there's no other county with your name, that's awesome. That's wonderful. Then you don't have anything to worry about. But make sure that your, the whole name on Facebook can be in there. People search, it's very easy. It's not the same as Instagram or Twitter where you kind of want a shorter handle. Go ahead and put in the whole thing, like Lee County NC Democratic Party. People need to find you easily. Also, make sure your banner and your description are on message. So we can talk about this more if you have questions about this, but you want to present the image of the community that you want to have. So, I'll be really frank. If you are all white men sitting around a table in your county party and that's not who you want to vote in November, try to get some diversity in your photos. Get some women in there, people of color, get some young folk in there, or maybe you're all young people, get some older folk in there. Just try to make sure that, what you are saying and what you are presenting is consistent with who you want to be as a party, or let's say you're a candidate, who do you want to turn out to vote for you. I'm sure Greg can talk a lot more about this than I can, but in terms of who you, like how you start building community, who you invite as your friends, your target audience, who you accept as friends. Greg, you probably have a lot more thoughts on that as an elected official.
So it depends on kind of who do you want your audience to be, right? And so I think if you're doing it for a county party, your primary thing should be people in your county. And I don't know how much you want to go into this, Ashley, but I think that you have to have a combination of thinking, how do we get to people organically, and how do we do it through paid boosting? And it would be really smart, if you can afford it, to even have a very small budget, even if you're only spending maybe $100 a month, but to boost things into your geographic area. And then there's a technique you have to use in Facebook where people who like your post, you have to manually go and then invite them to like your page. And so you pay to boost the post, and then you invite them to follow up with the page, and slowly you build up an audience over time.
Yeah, those are all fantastic points. Hopefully, for those of you who already do have a Facebook page and have been using it, you know what he's talking about in terms of the paid boosting, the advert, you can do the ads. Maybe we can answer some questions about that towards the end. But yeah, we only occasionally really need to do that as a county party, but we have done it. And it's worked out really well for us. So I would actually recommend doing it. At the beginning of a campaign, you probably should think about what kind of budget you want to give towards advertising on social media. And that seems like, $100 seems very reasonable, depending on your county budget. Okay, so I put a little screenshot on the PowerPoint of Greg's one of his more recent videos that he did with Amy Steele, who's running for General Assembly. And I love it, and hopefully Greg can talk a little bit more about this. But this, I think, works really well on Facebook. It's a way of not just it's giving people access that they wouldn't necessarily be able to have otherwise. And so, Greg is sitting there with another candidate, and they're just having a little conversation. He's introducing her, and you can read, what he did here. It feels very accessible. You get to see these two people. They're very human. He's obviously writing in a very colloquial manner. This is, and then he's linking to everything. He's linking to Amy Steele's Facebook, her website. Man, that's a lot of hashtags, but you did it. I applaud you. But this is a really good way of using Facebook, which is why I put this on here. And obviously you can see that a lot of people liked it. There were some comments or quite a few shares, tons of views. So if you can get to this, then you are doing very well. So kudos, Greg. It's also, so Facebook is also, this is a primary use for it is events. So even our two high school students who are sitting in the room with us, even they use it still for events. So definitely don't think of it as you're only going to be able to, use Instagram or Twitter to announce events. You want to continue to use Facebook. I myself, Facebook is still a place that I do calendaring. So any Facebook event that I've said I'm going to go to, I'm interested in, it ends up on my iCal. And so for me, it's still critical to know, like, when I've got a fundraiser coming up or I've got a canvassing coming up. So please, please, please use it for events. And you can invite people, obviously, for events. Obviously, I've mentioned this before, great for subgroups. So whatever subgroups you're trying to create in your county, give them a private page where they can talk to each other. I know there are a number of candidate groups, like a lot of first-time female candidates running for the General Assembly. They have their own private group that they use. And I think it's amazing that they do it. So I would highly recommend that you use Facebook for that. And also, don't blow people out of the water with too many posts per day. You know, it drives you nuts. It drives me nuts. 1 to 2 posts per day is going to be great. The only caveat there is if you've got something major coming up, like obviously as we get closer to the election, or if there's a major issue, you might want to post a little bit more, but really save that for Twitter or even Instagram. Facebook, you don't want to put too many posts up. And then my last point is you will get questions. We definitely do here at OCDP, so try to be responsive. This is how people are going to reach out to you, and so you want to make sure that they know that you are on the other end of the line. So I'm going to move on to Twitter. Greg, anything more you want to say about Facebook?
Yeah, actually, can you put that slide back up? I want to build on a couple of things that you said. On the point you made about groups, I share almost every post that I put up to about 20 subgroups that I'm a member of, because that starts organic sharing of the post that people in those groups then tend to share it, and I don't have to pay to boost it to get onto those people's feeds. Because when you share a post into a group, everyone who's a member of that group automatically gets notified that there's a new post in the group. Whereas if I just put it up on my page, because of the Facebook algorithm, not everybody automatically sees everything that I post. They want you to have to pay for that. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is just on this specific Facebook post that Ashley picked, which is my most recent one, so you should be able to find it really easily. There were so many things that went right on this video shoot with Amy. Video works best when there's a high degree of emotion coming through, and you can see even in that still that like I'm laughing and trying to turn away from her while she's doing this goofy thing with her hands. And she just had, I actually cut the video differently. Instead of cutting with a straight opener, I cut with me breaking down and like laughing in front of the camera, because she had so much emotion going before we went live, and I was going to try to cut in with a straight start. But the first 6 seconds of what you post in a video gets the most views. And so I left in what I thought was a really entertaining thing that would have been an outtake otherwise, to try and capture people in the first 6 seconds and get them to watch a little bit longer than they might otherwise. And then Ashley mentioned the number of hashtags. And I've been trying to follow up. I read some research that said the optimal number of hashtags on any Facebook or Instagram post is 11. So I've been trying to do 11 or more hashtags on all of my posts. Sometimes it's hard, but usually like the first 4 that you see there, I do on every post. And then, the ones here, the other ones are really kind of specific to the conversation I had with Amy.
Wow, 11. That's a lot of hashtags.
Yeah, that's why it's easy to have 4 to start with no matter what.
Yeah. And for any of you out there who don't know why you would have a lot of hashtags, it's because this is how people search. So, for instance, like Black Girl Magic, which I love, right? Anybody who's going to be searching for Black Girl Magic, it's nice to have, an African-American woman running for North Carolina House pop up in that feed, right? And not just Beyonce, although God bless Beyonce. So it's wonderful to use that, even if it's a tiny bit off topic, it works in this situation. So yeah, that's a lot of fun.
But like NCED, NCED, that's a pretty popular hashtag for anybody that follows education issues in North Carolina. So it puts that into a stream with a different group of people. But then Woe Unto Doubters is a specific reference to the video. So it's not intended to bring new people in to watch the video. It's just intended to kind of get you to laugh if you see the video and you see that hashtag.
Yeah, great point. And I would definitely encourage you all, if you're wondering how to get people to find you, go and look at other things that, go find other people's hashtags, right? So if you, for instance, break the majority, right? If you are interested, you've got somebody running for a House seat and, obviously we're trying to break the majority, you want to make sure you're using that hashtag. That way anybody who's searching is going to find you. If you are a candidate, running in one of these flippable districts, use that hashtag. So yeah, if you want to know how to get more people in, go look at what other people are posting and just steal their hashtags. There's nothing wrong with that.
And the 2 biggest ones in North Carolina politics are NCPOL, and then for legislative stuff specifically, NCGA.
Perfect. Okay, I'm going to move on to Twitter. Are we okay on time? Okay. So many of the same things I could say about Facebook, I'll say to Twitter, but I'll be more specific here. You want your account, your handle, of course, to be memorable and searchable, and obviously not similar to other accounts, but try to keep it also short. So obviously we are OC Party as opposed to Orange County Democratic Party. Keep it a little bit shorter. Wake Dems makes it very memorable. Keep your banner really minimal, visually clean. You want to make sure that when people find your Twitter feed, like your logo is probably the D, maybe it's in the colors of your county, but it's probably the national D. But your banner, that once they hit your page, you want to make sure that they know absolutely they found the right place. So don't clutter it up with a bunch of things. Just make sure that you've got something that says, let's say your county party, or candidate with your picture. Okay, so then Twitter, building your community on Twitter. You obviously want to follow everyone that's important to you. So local issues or all of the state stuff. So obviously North Carolina Democratic Party, maybe flip and see all of your elected officials. And it's just good manners. If they follow you, you send them a little note and just tweet thanking them. Keeps everybody civil. We want to encourage that. Greg, do you want to jump in on follows, who you follow, how you get people to follow you?
I don't have as clear of a strategy on this on Twitter. I mean, followers start to come naturally once you post things that are interesting enough that they get retweeted and liked and other people see them. And it also helps that if when you do follow people, that lots of people will follow you back pretty much automatically. So I mean, I think from a county party perspective, that would be a thing. Like, go follow as many people in your county as you can and try and get them to follow you back.
So like Facebook, this is really good for events and actions. I think Twitter is even more action oriented. If you want people to show up for something, if you want to remind people of things going on, if you want to say, hey, look, we're gathering right now on the lawn somewhere. Twitter is where you want to be. You want to post updates. So let's say there is an action. Maybe there's a monument in your town that might be in the process of coming down. Go ahead, be there, post from it. Tell people what's going on. Tell them, how you stand on things. That's what Twitter is definitely for. So I really think of Twitter as much more of the public conversation. I think Greg mentioned this earlier. It's like the influence. So you want to follow those who you find influential, and you also want to show that you have influence. And maybe he can talk a little bit more on that. But certainly whenever there is something going on and you have a public statement, try to post to Twitter about that. And you can always put up a link to your public statement if that's on your Facebook or that's on your website. But you want to make sure that you are staying in the conversation with whatever's going on that's important to you and to your audience. And certainly retweeting. So the 2 screenshots I put up here are from our feed at OCDP. We have a canvassing going on this weekend, so we wanted to make sure, which I'm going to do, which Julie's going to do, I think everybody in this room is going to do. And so this is for, our county. We want to get people out, and so we posted a photo that shows people out there, good-looking people of Orange County with their clipboards about to go canvassing. This obviously is not from this weekend. This is from a previous canvass. But you want to put up a photo to show, hey, look, you can join us. This is easy. We're all out here in our tank tops with clipboards, and we're going to make this happen. So you want to make sure to do this, and obviously include the link for, let's say, Sign Up Genius, or however people can get involved. You want to make it really, really, really easy for people. For retweeting, it's really about amplifying. So obviously here we retweeted You Can Vote, organization, obviously, to get people registered and get people out to vote. I thought they did a really nice little visual here. It's super easy with emojis. So we retweeted that, and other people retweeted it after us. So that's really about amplifying the message for whatever groups that you think you want to support, and they obviously will usually retweet what you do as well. I'm going to move on to Instagram. I know we're running short on time. I want to get to your questions. Instagram, highly, highly visual platform. This is all about photos, people, inspirational quotes, invitations. So if you are uncomfortable in a really visual platform, try to work with something like Buffer. They have a built-in tool called Pablo, which means, for instance, on the screenshot on the lower right, Dr. Kyle, who's running for Congress down in the Wilmington area, I thought this was a really great series that she did on Instagram. I think this was probably built in Pablo. So she just took a testimonial, threw it up on a solid background with a photo. You can do all of this within Buffer, or if you're good at Photoshop or Canva, you can use those as well. This is how people's eyeballs hit on things and they actually read them. If you have any questions on this, I'm happy to give you more tips, but just it's really about what is the 1 second that you've got while somebody's thumb is scrolling across their screen. Think about people, color, action, and very minimal words. And also, I tend to think, and Greg, you can weigh in here, I think of Instagram as a much more positive platform. So things that are, you want to inspire people. So staying a little bit more positive, staying brighter, more focused. This would be a great place to talk about, you know, your hopes and dreams for your county, what the Democrats stand for, what are Democratic principles. It's a great, great way to, you know, to reach people in a much more positive and civil discourse, as opposed to just reposting, let's say, negative articles. We have a lot of negative stuff going on. I totally understand the instinct to do that, but Instagram is a good way to really stay a lot more positive and inspiring and influence people in a better direction, perhaps. You also don't need to inundate people here. Once a day is probably going to work. And this is also a great way to thank all of your volunteers and support groups. So everybody that's canvassing, take photos of them, tag them. People just love, love, love. And I don't mean to be cynical about this. People love to see themselves on Instagram. So tag them. They will share it. When they share it, their friends love it. Their friends love to see them canvassing. You never know. If one more person turns up at your next canvass, it was worth it. Also, hashtags are huge here. So don't be shy with hashtags. Okay, Greg, anything I missed with Twitter or Instagram that you'd like to throw in?
No, keep going.
Okay. So this is my last slide before we get to questions, and this is really brief. I'm sure Greg has more things to say about this. Things to avoid with social media. Don't get sucked into the troll sphere. There are just trolls out there. This is the world we live in. Thanks, Vladimir. And so just don't even respond to them. Don't let anything get personal. Don't respond to anything personal. Just ignore it. Trolls thrive on negativity and intention. And then security breaches, the best thing to do is just make sure that you've got either one person or two people who actually have access to your social media. Change those passwords frequently. Make sure you understand your privacy settings, turn them all on. And then you can obviously do administrator controls. If any of you don't understand that, we can talk about that later. But certainly within Facebook, many of you might have concerns about this, but you can always set an administrator, and then you can also set people who are editors or contributors. So understand your privacy setting. And don't stray off message. I'm going to go back to a messaging protocol. Try to be really focused about what your message for your campaign is. That way you know when somebody wants to post something and it's off message, just better not to do it. You just don't want to have to retract or delete or confuse people. Just try to stay consistent. Okay, that's it. Greg, anything you want to add on things to avoid?
Don't feed the trolls.
Great. Okay, so I think maybe we've got some questions. Any questions? No questions? You guys are all social media masters?
Give people a second. I'll toss out one more piece of advice. On Facebook, use Facebook Live if you're trying to capture something that is truly live. But if you can capture something and post it later, then film the video do a little bit of clean editing, and use Facebook's captioning tool to caption the video, because once you have a caption on your video, it gets a lot more views because a lot of people just read the captions rather than listening to it. It's a much yeah, I mean, it's just much more powerful to have a captioned pre-recorded video than a live video.
Definitely. And as I've posted a bunch of videos, I mean, professionally, that's what I do. And I've also gotten a lot of pushback from people who say, when we don't put up captions, we're excluding a whole group of people, right? We need to make it as accessible as possible. So anybody who is blind or deaf, the captions work only if you've actually enabled the captions, I mean, in terms of their access to the video. So make sure to use that. Okay, so we've got a few questions here. The first one is folks may be feeling a bit overwhelmed. What should they focus on? Totally get it. That's completely normal. You are valid. Try to just do maybe one platform at a time. Part of this is thinking about who your audience is. So if you are a county party chair and you live in a county where, like, let's say millennials didn't turn out to vote at all, and you know that they're there and you want to get them out, maybe just focus on Instagram for the time being. I think you'll probably get more bang for your buck with Facebook, but it depends on who your audience is. So just start with one platform and start with thinking about what's the message you want. Who are the people you're trying to reach? Talk to a lot of people in your community. See what they use. If you just feel like, okay, I live in a county that's maybe more rural, maybe people don't feel digitally connected, okay, well then maybe you focus on just mobile texting for, let's say, getting volunteers out. I mean, there are going to be lots of circumstances that dictate which social media platform, or if any social media platform. But I would encourage you to start somewhere. So if it's just starting with one, maybe Instagram if you want to hit younger folks, Facebook if you feel like you've got a really reliable base of people and you're just trying to organize them to actually get out the message, Facebook's going to be better for that. If you know that you can get volunteers out to Canvas and so forth. Or if it's just you want to have a voice and you want to be able to respond to every op-ed or letter to the editor, or you want to make sure that the county party is being recognized, then just go for Twitter. But yeah, you don't have to do everything, and it's okay if you don't do everything. Start somewhere, and eventually whatever you start with you'll get better at, and then hopefully bring more people on board, and then they can start maybe on a different platform, or you can expand your message. But whatever you do, don't stay silent. Start somewhere. Okay.
Yeah, and recognize that you can build slowly. You don't have to go, you really can't go on social media. You can't go from 1 to 100 right away. You have to take steps that build it up over time. And it's okay to grow slowly and learn and try new things.
Yeah, and we're all learning, and the landscape is always changing. So even what I say tonight might be completely obsolete in 2 years. We don't know. So yeah, I would definitely echo what Greg just said. Okay, we have another question about trolls. So hide them, delete them, ignore them. Greg, you want to take this? How do you deal with trolls?
So I don't tolerate people being abusive. So in those people, I will hide them or delete them. But I do let people leave comments up that are contradictory to my message. And I generally, if my followers want to get into debate with them, I let that happen as long as I don't feel it's abusive. There's a very utilitarian reason for that, which is that Facebook rewards posts that have a high degree of conversation going on in the comments. So it's actually helpful to have that going back and forth for getting the post to have more views. But I also just, I'm not interested in stifling political debate. That doesn't match well with my values and principles.
Yeah, and as you use these platforms, you'll get better and better at recognizing troll behaviors. And the same goes with bots. So we have a question about how to deal with bots. So you're obviously not going to know always what's a bot and what's not. Some things might be super, super obvious, like a handle in Russian, maybe, I don't know. But you're not always going to know who's really a troll and who's a bot, versus who might just be a disgruntled person in your community. You'll get better at recognizing it as you go along. You know, having seen what we've done over the past year here with OCDP, we mostly get people who are definitely Orange County citizens. They're asking us very specific questions that they could only know within Orange County. They're engaging us on very specific things like, you know, will the Carborough City Hall be open at this hour for early voting? So we rarely get, you know, bots or trolls. Greg, you probably get more of this.
Yeah, I mean, surprisingly, no. Even though I have a pretty big following statewide, I don't get a lot of it because our social media is so siloed, and most people only follow social media that they actually agree with. If one of my posts goes viral, then I tend to get more of that, but it's actually helpful when it gets into that back and forth dialogue. So it doesn't stress me out. I just don't personally engage. I will answer someone's question even if I know they don't agree with me, but I don't engage with them if I know they're just there to try and sow dissent.
Yeah, I mean, all of these posts, whether it's a bot or a troll, you know, everything on social media can be so fleeting that if you don't give it any attention, it's gone. It's disappeared into the ether. Once you give it attention, you've made it a thing. So, yeah, I would say I would reiterate what Greg has just said, and just don't give it attention. Just ignore it. It'll go away. We've got another question. One moment.
And I have to hop off in about 1 minute, everybody. But if there's one more question, let's take it.
Which platform has the most? Hang on a sec. Has the most activity. Okay, so they all have a ton of activity. It depends on what your audience is. So for instance, as Greg mentioned, if you're talking about influencers, so let's say journalists, right? So the NNO, Greensboro Record, Charlotte Observer, Washington Post, New York Times, Twitter, right? If you want to be talking to journalists, if you want to be reposting current news, events, updates on whatever's going on with the Kavanaugh hearing, you want to be on Twitter. If you want to be promoting, like if you're a candidate, for instance, and if you want to be promoting yourself and your image, and you know that your audience is primarily, let's say, undergraduates or high school, you know, seniors in your community, and you want to get them out to vote, you want to be on Instagram. So it really depends on who your audience is. If you want to, you know, get all of your volunteers out and you are talking to mostly working professionals and family members and retirees, you want to be on Facebook. That's why it's really helpful to have those conversations about who you're trying to reach. Because if you're only going to pick one platform or two platforms, you want to make sure that that's where your audience is for whatever is your campaign. Hopefully I've answered that question. Greg, would you agree with that?
Yep. Oh, that's great.
Okay.
And I'm going to have to bow off, but
Okay.
I just want to say thank you to everybody for participating, and feel free to hit me up on social media, and I'd be happy to interact with you.
Awesome. Thanks so much for your time, Greg.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Take care. Okay, I can stay on maybe for another couple minutes if we have any more questions. We will Zoom. Also, so if you have any feedback about what worked and didn't work, if we went too fast, too slow, if we can improve, any of those things, we are happy to take your comments. Hopefully this has been a helpful series. If you have not participated in one of these webinars before, the videos are all up on YouTube, and so you can watch all of them. But we really appreciate you taking the time to be with us, and we just want to help everyone. So if it's not helpful, definitely let us know. If you've got any more questions about County to County and our efforts with OCDP, please email Julie or Jenny at c2ctrainings@orangedems.com. And you can email me and my social media colleagues for any more requests or help about this particular topic to socialmedia@orangedems.com. And if there are no more questions, I wish you a great deal of luck and have fun on social media. It is supposed to be fun. It's supposed to build community. Don't be scared. It's a lot of fun. And you can do a lot of really great creative things with it. hang on, we're getting one more thing. Oh, how to access the OCDP YouTube. I'm going to let Julie jump on for that. I think she's got the specific address, but so I'm going to hand the mic over to Julie to talk about that. But thank you all for being with us tonight, and good luck.
Hi, this is Julie Tomkovic one more time. And right now we are just completing the upload for our past webinars onto YouTube. We've got about 6 of them loaded up right now, and we're doing some of the final work in terms of editing titles and descriptions. They're going to be in a private room, so it won't be publicly searchable. Everyone who has signed up for this webinar or past webinars will be getting an email that will do a follow-up and give you the links for the past webinars. That is going to include phone banking, canvassing, organizing your precincts, registering voters, the Tom Sullivan's Get Out the Win activities from now until Election Day, and that will include tonight's webinar on Get Social. It's going to include next week or not next week, but the following Sunday, we'll be having one on digital tools, and then we'll come back one more time and hit phone banking and canvassing, and end up on poll greeting, giving tips on do's and don'ts. So it's really a full schedule. If you can just give me a few more days, I am connecting up with our guru on YouTube, and like I said, doing just the final cleanup. But within the next couple of days, we will be sending you the follow-up emails that'll have the links on it. We do ask you to be respectful of it. That means, don't post those links on your Facebook pages. This is part of how we're keeping some control and management over these. But everyone who has participated in tonight's webinar or past webinars or the next couple of webinars coming up are going to have access to these links. If for some reason, we get past 2, 3, 4 days and you haven't gotten that, go ahead and drop us an email to the C2C trainings at orangedems.com just to make sure that we have your correct email address, and so that we can follow up with you appropriately. Or if there's only really one, you don't care about all of the other links, all you really want is the one on registering voters to be able to share with your precinct. Let us know what it is that you want and what's most important to you. But I want to thank everyone so much for joining us tonight and for staying with us. I hope it has been as fun and educational for you as it has for me. I can't tell you how much I personally have learned from this tonight. But remember, we are a team, and there is no blue wave without us. And I always think of myself, I have this image in my brain that I'm a drop in the big blue wave, all right? And I'm a part of making it happen and making it come. And I hope that you and your team consider yourselves that way, and that we're all doing the heavy work now and the heavy lifting so that we have an excellent election night in November. All right, thanks again, and I will be signing off. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. Thanks.